2 Samuel chapter 3 tonight, as we continue in our survey through the Old Testament. 2 Samuel chapter 3, entitled this message, When No is the Best Answer. You know, our world is falling apart. Our nation is falling apart. And I believe that one of the reasons, and probably one of the main reasons, is because the family is falling apart. You see, God established the family, He established the church, He established the government, and He placed people as authority in those institutions. And when that authority is undermined, well, what we find, society begins to fall apart. And it begins at home. It begins in the family. You see, when a child is born and as they start to gain understanding, the first word that you need to teach them is no. No. Can I? No. And what do? Well, they cry. They cry. And if you don't teach them that word no, well, when they become teenagers and you tell them no, what will they do? They whine. They whine. And as they grow older, and if they still don't know how to submit to that word no, well, you see, it gets worse. And they commit crimes. They do things, well, they won't take no for an answer, so they take what they want. You see, when we look at this story that we see here in 2 Samuel, we're seeing how there's a transition from King Saul to King David. And as we will see, there's a division between these two houses, the house of Saul, the house of David. And when we look at David's house, well, we know that God is the one who establishes his house, his kingdom. And David, even though he is a great king, there are still things about him, well, he has flaws. And one of the flaws that we will see, well, David, he doesn't like to say no sometimes. He doesn't say no to himself. He doesn't want to say no to his children. Doesn't want to say no to his commanders. And because of that, well, his kingdom, well, even though it will be at one point united, it will at some point get divided. Look with me, 2 Samuel chapter 3. Now there was a long war between the house of Saul and the house of David, but David grew stronger and stronger, and the house of Saul grew weaker and weaker. Now, part of the reason why I believe that David's house grew stronger is because, well, he had a united house. Remember, the men that followed him, they were all behind David. They supported his leadership. But on the other side, Ishbosheth, the son of Saul, who took over the throne because Abner installed him, well, that house is divided. You see, God didn't call Ishbosheth to be the leader. It was Abner who wanted to be the leader. So he placed Ishbosheth there in hopes that he will rule from behind. Now look at verse 2. So the sons were born to David in Hebron. His firstborn was Amnon. His secondborn, verse 3, Chilion, by Abigail, the widow of Nabal. And then we see Absalom, also the son of Maacah, the daughter of Talmiah. In verse 4, the fourth, Adonijah. The fifth we see is Shephatiah. And then in verse 5, the sixth, Ithream. So these are the 6 sons of David from his 6 wives. Now I want to make notes that David don't know how to say no to himself. David, well, he multiplied wives. One of the things that God told the kings that they are not to do. Don't multiply wives. But here it is. David is multiplying wives because why? Well, you see, David did this for two reasons. Well, one, for pleasure, right? David had an addiction, as so many even today have an addiction. They don't know how to get out of it. They don't know how to get help, and they need the Lord to deliver them. See, this is one area that David never submitted his life to God. But he also did this for power. Remember, well, when a king is established, what he does, he multiplies wives. He have many sons, so that if his kingdom is attacked, well, if they kill all of his sons, there's a chance that there will be one that will remain that can assume the throne. So David has all of these sons. Now, we have here 6 of his sons. There's still more to come. I believe, from my understanding, there's about 19 that is listed, not including probably those that are from some of his concubines. We know that there's one daughter, Tamar. So from what we have recorded, about 20 children, 19 boys. Now, I want to make note of a couple of them that are here, some of these boys. The first one, Amnon, again, verse 2. And then the second one I want to take note of is Absalom and Adonijah in verse 4. These three, well, they're going to have caused a lot of issues in David's family. You know, people say that, you'll hear people say, well, I have a dysfunctional family. Well, understand David, well, he put the funk in dysfunctional with his family. And the reason why is because, well, while David was a great king, a great leader, well, when it comes to his home, well, a divided family, divided heart. You see, David, later on in in 1 Kings, actually, I'll just read it real quick. 1 Kings chapter 1, in verse 6, and it says, and his father had not rebuked him at any time by saying, why have you done so? You see, this kind of tells the type of parenting that David did. He never rebuked his sons. He never said no to them. So for that reason, well, remember I mentioned the first son, Amnon. Well, you see, Amnon, he will look on to his half-sister, Tamar, and he is going to force himself on her, rape her. Now, when this happens, what will David do? David will remain silent. He will not address the issue. He will not discipline his son. And so his other son, Absalom, Tamar's brother, well, he's going to do what? Become angry. My dad is not doing anything. So he will take matters in his own hands and he will kill his brother Amnon. You see, division in the home, dysfunction in the home, yes. And because David is silent, David is not teaching his sons no. He's not teaching his children no. And so when you come to now Adonijah, well, Adonijah, one of David's other sons, when David now becomes, well, he's going to be passing from this life, preparing to transition to give the throne over, well, Adonijah will say, I want to rule. I want to be in charge. When David would, for his other son, Solomon, well, you see, David loved Solomon. David wanted Solomon to be king, but Adonijah wasn't having it. Adonijah wanted to be king. And so what did he do? Well, he installed himself as king. And David had to rush and put Solomon in that position before Adonijah took the throne. Now, again, all of this to say, David didn't teach his sons no. And that word no, again, it's the first word we need to teach our children. You see, if they don't know, if they don't understand that word, if they don't learn to respond in a proper way when they hear the word no, they're not going to submit to mom and dad, listen, they're not going to submit to authority. They're not going to submit to the police officer. They're not going to submit to the government, which again, all of these institutions God have established to keep order. He will suffer so many heartaches and pain because, well, Absalom, after he kills his brother, he's going to try to take over the kingdom. And now, it was so while there was war between the house of Saul and the house of David that Abner was strengthening his hold on the house of Saul. You see, Abner to be king. Ishbosheth is on the throne as long as he is holding power. And so every time he goes out and he fights the battle, he has the army behind him. He has the strength. And have not delivered you into the hands of David, and you charge me today with a fault concerning this woman. Now, a typical politician, he is making a move, he's doing things, and what do politicians do? Listen, if you want to be a politician, you have to just do this very thing. I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't do this thing. I don't know the woman. Just deny it. That's what politicians do. And so here it is. He's making this power move. He's getting called out. And what's the first thing he do again? He's saying, how dare you accuse me? Don't you see how loyal I am to the house of Saul? Didn't I bring you into power? How dare you accuse me of doing such a thing? Notice he said, am I a dog's head? He's using that word. Well, if you are calling someone a dog, that's as low as you can get, you see. You see, dogs, well, we have dogs today, and we have them in our homes, and we call them family. We give them our names. Listen, in those countries, a dog is not something nice. And he's putting a guilt trip on Ishbosheth. He said, how dare you accuse me of this? Verse 9, may God do so to Abner, and more also, if I do not do for David as the Lord has sworn to him, to transfer the kingdom from the house of Saul and set up the throne of David over Israel and over Judah from Dan to Beersheba, and he could not answer Abner another word. Why? Because he feared him. Here it is that Ishbosheth was king, but he was fearful of Abner. He's fearful of him, and because he was fearful of him, I believe Ishbosheth never put Abner in check. You know, sometimes we could be so afraid of what people would say. Well, if I say this, and if I do this, then how will they respond? And so we be quiet. You see, because he did not put Abner in check, Abner became stronger. He became stronger. Now, verse 12, so Abner sent messenger on his behalf to David, saying, Who is the land? Who is the land? Saying also, make your covenant with me, and indeed my hand shall be with you to bring all Israel to you. Now, Abner is seeing that the house of Saul is becoming weaker, and the house of David is becoming stronger. So being that he is in one political party, he decided, you know what, it would probably be a good move to go to the other political party. Probably a good time to move on. So he's taking this opportunity. Hey, David, I want to strengthen you. I want to, well, as he's saying here, that I am going to give you all of Israel. But I want you to notice the word that he says here. Make your covenant with me, and indeed my hand shall be with you and bring you all Israel. My hand? Let me remind you, who promised the kingdom to David? It was God himself. It is not man that installed David. It is God that installed him. You see, Abner, he is, again, a politician. He is looking to set himself up, to put himself in a place of authority. And the same thing that he's doing to Ishbosheth is the same thing that he will do to David if David is not careful. You see, the kingdom is not given by man, it's given by God. This reminds me, if you remember, when Abraham, when his nephew Lot had gotten in trouble, remember he got taken into captivity, and Abraham went and rescued him. And when he came back from rescuing him, he came back from fighting these kings, and he came back with a lot of the loot, a lot of the treasures that they got from these kings. And we're told that the king, one of the kings came to him and said, hey, can I, I'm just going to read it here, verse 22 of Genesis chapter 14. Abraham said to the king of Sodom, I have raised my hands to the Lord, God Most High, the possessor of heaven and earth, that I will take nothing from a thread of a sandal strap, that I will not take anything that is yours, lest you should say that I have made Abraham rich. Abraham said no to the king of Sodom. I don't want your possession. I don't want you to come and say it's because of I. Whenever someone is running for office, what they would do, well, people will come by and say, hey, I want to endure. right? When David was serving Saul, Saul gave him his daughter, and there was just one catch. Look at verse 14. So David sent messengers to Ishbosheth, Saul's son, saying, "Give me my wife Michal, whom I betrothed to myself for 100 foreskins of the Philistines." You remember that deal what Saul made? He said, "If you want my daughter, you got to bring some foreskins of the Philistines." And so now David is saying, "Man, I want my wife back," because when he was running from Saul, Saul took his wife, gave her to another man, and now David is saying, "Man, I want her back." So he cut straight to the chase here by saying, "Hey, I paid for this horse with foreskins, and I want her back." Now, Ishbosheth, it says in verse 15, sent and took her from her husband, from Piltel, the son of Laish. Then her husband went along with her to Bahurim, weeping behind her. So Abner said to him, "Go, return." And he returned. What a sad, I mean, it breaks my heart to think this guy now is running behind his wife. "Oh, don't leave me, don't leave me." And David, with his 6 wives, now 7, and still would add another one, Bathsheba, later on, and concubine, and he's still not satisfied. You see, the point is here, I think it's worth noting, is that the flesh is never satisfied. The more you have, the more you want. The more money you have, the more money you want. The more, well, in this case, the more women he has, the more he wants. You know, why not just be satisfied with one? One is trouble enough. My wife is not in here. Just need one. Be content. But you see, David, again, political move. He's thinking, if I have Saul's daughter, again, that's making a political move. Hey, you know, if I have a child with her, I have access to his throne, his people. And so David took this man's wife. Now the guy returns, verse 17. Now Abner had communicated with the elders of Israel, saying, "In times past you were seeking for David to be king over you. Now then do it for," now then do it, exclamation. "For the Lord has spoken of David, saying, by the hand of my servant David, I will save my people Israel from the hand of the Philistines and the hand of all their enemies." And Abner also spoke in the hearing of Benjamin. Then Abner also went and spake in the hearing of David in Hebron all that seemed good to Israel, and and the whole house of Benjamin. Now, if you think about the words of Abner, he's saying to the people of Israel that first of all, you wanted David to be king, which is very insightful, because here it is that God anointed David. The people of Israel, they wanted David to be king, but because Abner did that power move, because he installed Ishbosheth, they never had that opportunity. He persuaded them not to make David their king. But notice again his words. "In the time past, you were seeking for David to be king over you." And he says, "For the Lord has spoken of David, saying, by the hand of my servant David, I will make my people." Again, pay attention. Abner knew exactly what God said. So what did he say to God? "No, I don't like God's plan." You see, he didn't see a path for him to rule, so he went the easiest path. Just like so many times God will tell us what we should or what shouldn't do, and we say no to God. "No, I want my own way." Again, he knew God's plan. And so God had made it clear, verse 19, and Abner also spoke again to the Benjamites. He also spoke to in the hearing of David, all that seemed good to Israel and the whole house of Benjamin. So he convinced all of Israel. Remember, David was just over, Hebron. Now he convinced the Benjamites. He convinced all of the other tribes, the 10 tribes of the north. And so now they all are considering and probably will be united under David. So verse 20, so Abner and the 20 men with him came to David at Hebron, and David made a feast for Abner and the men who were with him. Then Abner said to David, I will arise and go and gather all Israel to my lord the king, and they may make a covenant with you, and that you may reign over all that your heart desires. So David sent Abner away, and he went in peace. Now here it is, David seeing this opportunity. He's probably at this point saying, wow, God is giving me the kingdom. He is using Abner to give me the kingdom. Again, think about who Abner is. Abner is a man who is looking for political power. God doesn't need Abner. God will use this, but he doesn't need Abner. God already was working in the lives and the hearts of the people of Israel. It was just a matter of time. Now we know that, again, God works out all things together for the good, for those who love him. He's going to work it out. But he didn't need Abner to do that. And notice David, all David is doing here is just making a meal. He's just cooking. And I want to underline that and highlight that because, you see, when God gives us a promise, He is the one that's going to fulfill that promise. I think sometimes when God tells us something, we go out in our own strength and try to accomplish it in our own strength. Remember what the scripture says in Galatians, oh, you foolish Galatians, how is it that what God began in the spirit, you're trying to complete in the flesh? David put forth no effort here. God is going to give him the kingdom, using even his enemies to give him the kingdom. So David sent Abner away. Again, it says, sent him away in peace. Now, I don't think this is a good move for David. Remember Abner, and we're going to look at even Joab. Remember these two commanders, they're fighting for position, for power. And I think David should have dealt with Abner. Well, nevertheless, look at verse 22. At that moment, the servant of David and Joab came from a raid and brought much spoil with them, but Abner was not with David in Hebron, for he had sent him away, and he had gone in peace. When Joab and all the troops that were with him had come, they told Joab, saying, Abner, the son of Ner, came to the king, and he sent him away, and he has gone in peace. Then Joab came to the king and said, what have you done? Look, Abner came to you. Why is it that you sent him away, and he has already gone? Surely you realize that Abner, the son of Ner, came to deceive you, to know you're going out and you're coming in, and to know all that you are doing. Now, notice his tone to David. How could you? Don't you know? I mean, well, who's king here? You see, he is confronting David. He's in disagreement with David's move. And how did David respond? Well, we don't hear anything from David. David is quiet. David is not dealing with him. You see, David is not putting him in check and saying, wait a minute, you need to have some respect for the office here. You see, David is allowing him to get away with this. And guess what? This will come back and bite David in the rear end. When Adonijah will, raise up and try to overthrow Solomon when he's becoming king, Joab will be there to help him. Now, it says in verse 26, and when Joab had gone from David's presence, he sent messenger after Abner, who brought him back from the well of Sirah, but David did not know it. Here it is again. Remember before when Abner and Joab, remember when they went and did this battle? Again, Ishbosheth didn't know. David didn't know. These guys are doing their own thing. They're not submitting to their king. They're not submitting to their authority. They're doing their own thing. They're undermining their leaders, David's leadership. And so now, it's in verse 27, now when Abner had returned to Hebron, Joab took him aside in the gate to speak with him privately, and there stabbed him in the stomach so that he died for the blood of Ashiel, his brothers. So remember when this whole battle went on, Ashiel, he went after Abner, running after him, trying to kill Abner. And Abner turned around and said, "You need to stop. Go fight someone else. I'm a skilled, warrior. I will take your life." And he didn't want to stop, and he turned around and hit him with the back of the spear, and he ended up dying. Now, who was this guy? Well, again, Joab's brother. Now, Joab is telling David, Abner is coming here, and he's probably just spying you out. He's a double agent. He's trying to undermine you. And he's using that as an excuse. But the reality is, he was bitter. He was bitter. And he wanted revenge. And so here it is. He took revenge. He killed Abner. Verse 28, afterwards, when David heard it, he said, "My kingdom and I are guiltless before the Lord forever of the blood of Abner, the son of Ner. Let it rest on the head of Joab and all his father's house, and let there never fail to be in the house of Joab one who has discharge of or is a leper, who leans on a staff or falls by the sword, or who lacks bread." So David and Abishai, his brother, killed Abner because he had killed their brother Ahaziel at Gibeon in the battle. Now, as we see here, David is taking no responsibility for this. He's saying, I'm guiltless of this. This is not my doing. I didn't tell him to do it. This is something that Joab decided to do on his own. And so what did he do? He calls down a curse upon Joab. Calls down a curse upon him and saying that your family will always have someone who's a leper or someone who's lame and whatever else. Again, let me remind you, what was David's action supposed to be? Discipline. He's going to leave him in that position again. And while he will do great things under David's leadership, he is a man that has his own agenda. And let me tell you this, again, the scripture says, Jesus said, "A kingdom divided by itself cannot stand." And when people have their own agendas, whether it's a child in the family that says, "I'm going to do whatever I want," or someone in ministry that says, "I'm going to do what I want," or in politics, when that happens, again, you look at our country, we're divided. Do you think we can continue with the division that we have, where if one political party says red, the other one say no, blue. If the one says blue, the other one say no, red, and no one can agree on anything because everyone has their own agenda. Now, he didn't discipline him. He called down curse upon him. But verse 31, then David said to Joab and all the people who were with him, tear your clothes, gird yourself with sackcloth, and mourn for Abner. And King David followed the coffin. So they buried Abner in Hebron, and the king lifted up his voice and wept at the grave of Abner, and all the people went. And the king sang a lament over Abner and said, should Abner die as a fool dies? Your hands were not bound, nor your feet put into fetters. As a man falls before wicked men, so you fell. Then all the people wept over him again. And when all the people came to persuade David to eat food while it was still day, David took an oath, saying, God do so to me, and more also if I taste bread or anything else till the sun goes down. Now all the people took note of it, and it pleased them, since whatever the king did pleased all the people. For all the people and all Israel understood that day that it had not been the king's intent to kill Abner, the son of Ner. Then the king said to his servant, do you not know that a prince and a great man has fallen this day in Israel? And I am weak today, though anointed king, and these men, the sons of Zeruiah, are too harsh for me. The Lord shall repay the evil according to his wickedness. So David mourns for Abner, and he encouraged the whole people, all of the people, to mourn for him. And they did. He even started to fast and said, I'm not going to eat until the next day. And so here it is. David is mourning. The people see his heart is broken for what has happened, and so they look up to David, and I guess David's leadership, they were pleased with it, which is a good thing. When you look at David, his leadership style, again, he is very much respectful of people. Even his opponents, right? His political opponents, he's very respectful of them. When we look at this chapter again and seeing just all of the politics that's happening here, and even as I mentioned, David as a father, not that the greatest father because he failed to discipline his children, and in certain cases we see with Joab, he is silent when he should speak, and there's just a lot going on. But man, I just look at this chapter and I just think about the world that we live in, and I look at the things that's happening in our country. Just this past week, I was watching a video of these three little boys. I want to say they're between 8 and 10 years old, and they were robbing or stealing from a Walgreens. Stealing from a Walgreens. They load up some bags and they're walking out. And as they're walking out, I guess they lock the doors so that they don't escape. And they're in there, these little boys, cussing. And they say, you better open this door, I'll bust you up. And, it's just like, what in the world is going on? What is going on? If these kids are 8, 9, 10 years old, what will happen when they get older? And I look at how the response of the family is not like, hey, my family member is wrong. And instead, they're defending them. You see, what I find is that people are not under the authority of God anymore. Everyone is doing what is right in their own eyes. And so when you tell someone no, they don't know how to respond to it. We're seeing disobedience. And I know even just right here in Jacksonville, this case with this guy that got punched in his face because he didn't submit to the police officer. And that's a big case. And people are saying, well, the police officer is wrong for what he has done. The guy received an order. License, registration, come out of the car? No. And what happened? Well, you see, everyone always looks at what happened after the fact, but I've been pulled over many more times than probably most of you here, because I was a crazy driver. I thank God every day for the mercy He has shown me, because I should have died a long time ago. You know, I-95, well, it have 4 lanes. No, I made it 5 lanes. You understand? That's how I drove. Made it from West Palm Beach to Miami in 20 minutes. I should have died. One police officer, he pulled me over. I was speeding, probably a 99 in a 35 miles per hour zone. He pulled me over, gave me a ticket, and he said, you should go slam yourself in a car, in a tree or something, you know. And he was upset with me. But you know what I did not do? I didn't say, well, how dare you? Didn't do that, right? Didn't do it. I still respected them, gave them what they required. I didn't get beat up. Just respect. Respect authority. Respect authority in the home. You know, there's this thing, it's always something new. If something is new, it's not good. It's called gentle parenting. And I watch this in amazement that pretty much is saying, we'll let the child decide what is right or wrong. That is not parenting. That's crazy. I don't know who came up with that idea, but let me remind you, what God said in this word, it still works. And what people are saying is, well, I don't believe what God's word, I don't like what God says, I'm going to do my own thing. Like I said, the Bible is clear. Follow His word. The Bible said, if your child is in sin, the rod will drive it far from them and save their soul from hell. We're caring too much about what people feel than the truth, than giving them truth. And it's hard sometimes. Of course, if you discipline your child, it hurts you to do it. And it should hurt. It shouldn't be something that you desire. Oh, I couldn't wait for you to mess up so I could. No, we shouldn't have to. That shouldn't be our heart. But what is discipline? It's discipling. And sometimes you use words, and sometimes, well, you have to use something else. And again, it will hurt. But what we're seeing is that people say, I'm not going to follow the scriptures, the prescription that is there. And what we see in our world, let me ask, is what we're seeing getting better? No. I remember when that show came out, Nanny 911. And then everything was time out. Go in the corner, time out. And what you're doing to that child is causing them to be bitter. And what you're doing to that child is teaching them that, well, the prison is the time out. When we go to the prison, listen, these guys, they don't know how to function in society because they don't know how to hear no. It's important for us as parents to teach our children, to train them up, not to ship them out and have someone else raise them up, but for us to be there to teach them, to discipline them, to be there for them. Do not be like a passive father like David, who he would not say no to his children. We see the dysfunctionality in his family. No, we need to discipline. We need to learn even ourselves, to discipline ourselves, to say no to ourselves, not eat everything that is in front of us, not do everything that's in front of us to do. No, we need to say no to ourselves, because if we can't say no to ourselves, then why will our children understand the word no? They need to see it modeled in us. And if you are one who is disrespectful, whether you agree with the political leader or not, but if you're showing disrespect, then don't be surprised if your children are showing this respect to you and to authority. God established authority for a reason. And the reason, well, follow it. Follow it. Because when you submit to authority, you're submitting to God.